Okay, so one of you requested that I make a video about my experience tapering meds, what it's like to taper medication, how I did it, some of the strategies, etc. So TLDR, I was hospitalized 4 times for psychosis. I was put on 6 medications. I took dozens. I saw dozens of treatment centers all over the country. I used metabolic therapies, diet, exercise, sleep to pretty much cure myself. Now everything's fine. I can work. I live on my own. Tapering meds is gnarly. Tapering meds is not easy. It's can be horrific. And so I'll share some of the things I've been through, my experience, and also some strategies I've used. Advice, my history. 2019 to 2020, I was on 5 medications at the time. I started cross-tapering Ativan to Valium, a benzodiazepine, to try to get off it because it has a longer half-life, so we thought that would be easier. I was taking Valium 5 times a day in 2020, just to try to like even it out, to make it even in my system. I went on a ketogenic diet in 2021, which was the key for me. That was critical, and I was tapering off Valium. I finally got off Valium in 2021. In the spring of 2022, I dropped olanzapine from 5 to 2.5. Over the course of about 3 months, that was challenging. In 2023, I got off lithium, 1400. That was actually an easy one. And then finally, this last year has been dropping my olanzapine from 2.5 to 1.7, as well as dropping a quetro carbamazepine, which is an anticonvulsant, which has been the worst. Well, benzo and this one, the worst withdrawal experiences I've ever had. TLDR, I've tapered a lot of meds. It's been really hard, and I've done a lot of this. So I know I've been through years of it, and I've developed some strategies about how to make it easier. It's not going to be easy. Okay, advice. God, I don't like giving advice. Number 1, understand potential withdrawal before you go on these meds. Like if you're already on meds, I'm sorry. If you're already on meds and you want to get off them, it might be tough. It might be. I'm sorry, you're where you are. If you're not on these meds yet, understand. People go on SSRIs and antipsychotics and these medications. When they try to get off them, many people, and I've heard this story anecdotally, I've seen it many times, have horrific withdrawal that's much worse than any of the original symptoms that they had. People have horrific withdrawal when they come off these meds. And of course, the doctors don't tell us that. So if you're not on any of these meds yet and you're thinking about it, just keep that in mind. Keep that in mind that if you go on an SSRI and you try to come off it, you might have debilitating withdrawal. Doctors don't tell us that because doctors don't deprescribe. I can talk more about that later, but yeah, that's the unfortunate reality. Number 2, if you can get stable before you taper, that's good. So ideally you would be on meds, you would start keto, and you would like figure it out. So you would figure out all these strategies, sleep, diet, exercise. Just get stable on a ketogenic diet before you start to taper meds. I think that's important, just to be at some baseline, because like dropping the meds can mess with your mood, bro. It can change things. I mean, that's changing the chemistry of what's going in your body a lot. So if possible, just get stable before you do it. Okay. Recognize withdrawal versus relapse. So symptoms are one thing. So for me, I know what manic symptoms look like, or hypomanic symptoms. It's me not sleeping enough. It's me getting many nights without sleeping, spending a lot of money on stuff, pressured speech, classic manic symptoms. So I kind of am really familiar with what those are at this point. I know what symptoms are, and I track my sleep, and I'm like really careful about it. Withdrawal is different. Like the symptoms of withdrawal for me are different from hypomania or depression. They're more acute. They come and go. I'm able to pick them apart now, so I know the difference. But yeah, I would say you could even write down like the symptoms you have in your illness. So like your bipolar, schizophrenia, illness, whatever it is. And then as you start to taper meds, if you have withdrawal from the meds, you'll understand that these symptoms you're experiencing from the withdrawal are different from the original symptoms of your illness. My brain's kind of scattered today. Doctors don't know. They'll tell you symptoms are coming back. This one's tricky because a lot of doctors, like when you start to taper the meds, they'll tell you, oh, your symptoms are coming back. Like that's what this is. So the meds were keeping you stable, and now you're coming off the meds, your symptoms are returning. A lot of them don't understand that actually that's just withdrawal from medication. So there's a difference between the withdrawal from medication, so some of the acute symptoms that might happen when you go off meds, and like symptoms of mental illness, bipolar, schizophrenia, schizoaffective depression, traditional mental illnesses. So your doctor might tell you like your symptoms are coming back. We need to go back up on the meds. It's hard like to tell your doctor like, hey, I think these are withdrawal symptoms. I would say fight for what you know to be true. I don't know. Sometimes your doctor might be right. Like you might be getting manic because you're coming off the meds. So like it's really hard. It's really hard to tease apart. But I would say generally, like if you know what your symptoms are for mental illness, and you know that you typically don't sleep when you're manic, but you're like sleeping, or your speech isn't pressured, or you're fine, that would be a sign that like you're having withdrawal symptoms as opposed to typical mental illness or mania. Number 5, prepare for weird symptoms. Do not underestimate the horror that can be medication withdrawal. Like, sorry for the bitter black pill, but like, if you are going to taper psych meds, this could be very, very hard. Don't assume it's going to be hard, I guess, before you do it, but like, this could be very challenging. I don't want to understate how horrific and debilitating psych med withdrawal can be for many, many people. So, I mean, my own symptoms: irritability, anxiety, insomnia, neuroemotions. There's this neuroemotions is this weird withdrawal effect that I get where like psychological problems in my brain become magnified because of the withdrawal and start to become 10 times more difficult and insurmountable because I'm going through the withdrawal. So it just amplifies my perception of how difficult psychological problems in my life seem. That's a weird one. And like, I thought it was only me, but I finally read about it on X that someone else was getting this neuroemotions thing. You might have insomnia. Like, it can be really, really bad. So just prepare, and like, it might be really, really hard. Do all the good stuff. So keto diet, exercise, good sleep, no drugs or nicotine. That's all like beyond important. I think just keeping as many variables as consistent as possible during the taper is important. Just like lifestyle variables, just to identify, like, is it actually the withdrawal that's causing me? And that's even been part of my own journey in the last year, is like keeping my diet consistent, keeping the sleep good. I've even realized that, like, and my mom was talking to some psychiatrist about this the other day, that actually eating extensive amounts of protein can suck the anticonvulsant medication away from my brain and make it more difficult to taper. And so like, I started eating moderate protein, and that seemed to help a lot. It's still kind of unclear for me, but what is exactly causing what? But like, keeping as much stuff as consistent as possible during the taper is huge. This is kind of a tricky like video to make, because like, this has just been so hard on me the last year. Okay. Taper strategies. Yeah. Taper slowly, especially if it's a new medication that you have not tapered before. Like, I always taper slowly, especially at the beginning. Like, just the first dose should be low drop. Just watch out for any like difficult, weird symptoms coming up. Drop it a tiny bit, get stable, like wait enough time to ensure that there are no weird withdrawal symptoms coming up, and then taper again after that. Taper even more slowly towards the end. So the end of the taper can be more difficult, because like, this is when you have the last little bits of the medication in your system. So that is where the taper should be at its slowest. And then the last thing I'll say about this is taper by percentage. So dropping from a 50 milligram dose to a 45 milligram dose is a 10% drop. Dropping from a 1 milligram dose to a 0.9 milligram dose is a 10% drop. So even though the former drop is 5 milligrams and the latter is 0.1 milligrams, they're both 5% relative to the original amount, or 10% relative to the original amount. So I think thinking about tapering medication in terms of the percentage of total medication in my system that I'm tapering, rather than like the total actual net amount of medication, is useful. A 1 milligram drop off a 50 milligram dose is only 2 milligrams. A 1 milligram dose off a 2 milligram dose is 50%. So just to think about things a little bit differently, thinking about how the same total medication drop in terms of amount of medication can be a different total percentile change from the drop, depending on where you're at and how much total medication you're taking. Okay, I can explain that more if necessary. Watch it a couple times. And then go back up if you need to. Like, if I had to do this recently with my Equetro drop, where like, I've had 7 months of just debilitating insomnia, irritability, neuroemotions, weirdness, just crazy symptoms from this Equetro carbamazepine taper, because we went too fast without trying to drop a tiny bit first off the original dose. Like, this is something I just learned this year. So I had to go back up a tiny bit. Like, I had to go back up a little bit, and that seemed to help a lot as well recently. Have a higher purpose. Yeah, bro. Have a reason to get through it. I mean, you got to have something to get you through. You got to have a why. Like, you've got to have a reason to power through, because it could be gnarly, especially if you're on like 4 or 5 psych meds. Get off all this shit, bro. 6-year journey for me. I'm going to be off them at some point, and I'm probably taking like 1/20th, 1/30th of the medication total amount I was taking like 5 years ago it has been hard. Life is good. Like it comes and goes, but like it's been really hard. Yeah. So have a reason to get through it. God, family, your kids, posterity. I don't know. My personal favorite mental reframes for this are like, number one, instead of being a goddamn soft kid raised in the burbs with everything handed to me with just an easy life, I got dealt a bit of a shit card and now I have to figure it out. And that's like character building. And so I'm actually grateful for that, like to have gone through this, to develop strength of character by going through some adversity, because like I would not have gone through real adversity had this not happened. So that's a useful positive reframe for me. Number two, I can help others with this. I'm in a position now where I can help people get through med withdrawal and tapering antipsychotic meds, SSRIs, like psych meds. I know this game. I've been in this game many, many years. I know the tricks. I know the symptoms. I know the things that can happen. I know how hard it can be. I'm starting to understand the mental strategies of what it takes to push through, how to push through, the spiritual component to this, which is like massive. And I'll keep talking about that because I believe in it. But having a higher purpose is so important. Okay, so just to summarize, understand withdrawal before you go on these meds. Be stable before you start to taper if possible. Oh, and taper each one med at a time. I mean, yeah, there's some discussion about this. I personally taper one medication at a time. Recognize withdrawal symptoms versus illness relapse symptoms. If doctors don't know, they won't tell you. They'll tell you your symptoms are coming back. They might, even though it's acute withdrawal. So try to tease out withdrawal symptoms versus like symptoms of your illness. Prepare for weirdness. Don't underestimate this foe that you're going to face, that you might face. It might be easy. It might not. It depends on the person and the medication. Like me, irritability, insomnia, neuroemotions, frustration. Like life is good, right? I'm stable. I don't have manic episodes, but it's hard. Do all the good stuff. Keto, exercise, get good sleep. Don't do drugs, nicotine, hang out with friends, be with people, be outside, walk around, get sunlight. Do that shit. I'm getting emotional just making this video. Do all that. Keep everything as consistent as possible. And for the taper strategies, go slowly and taper back up, taper by percentage and go up if necessary. Go slower towards the end and then have a higher purpose. Have a reason to get through it and do one med at a time. So yeah, I mean, there's a bigger story here with my journey. Like my journey tapering meds, I'm so fortunate I found ketogenic diet, metabolic therapies that I'm able to do this and get off meds, be able to do this safely. Like watch for symptoms when you're tapering. Like they might come back, even if you're doing keto, like this has happened for me. I'm lucky to have been able to do this with minimal hypomania and like continue to work, have a great job, great relationships, friendships, good sleep, be able to read books and do good things and be outside and not go crazy spending money and just be responsible and take care of all my affairs. And like, that's good. But it hasn't been easy. So yeah, more fits on the way, guys. I mean, I'm in a mood because like this has been on and off for a few months. I had a little bit of withdrawal this morning. It's been on and off, right? It's not easy, but I think it's important to share the tough stuff, just so you guys know, like this is real. Like this is still for me. I still deal with this shit, right? Even like 4 years into keto, 6 years into tapering, like I'm still trying to get off them. It's kind of sick that they didn't tell me like I was gonna spend years of my life having to do this. No one told me. No one told me that this was going to be so hard. And now I'm just on these meds and I got to deal with it. Anyways, peace.